Hello, welcome to this Computer Weekly video. I'm Bryan Glick, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Computer Weekly. And in this video, we're going to be talking about machine learning. And in particular, we're going to be having a discussion around some of the challenges of introducing machine learning into application software and what machine learning can bring to organisations by adding it on top of software functionality that you might already been using for some time. Now, to help me talk about this and share some of his experiences, I have with me Barry Starkey. Barry is a Bespoke Development Manager at Northgate Public Services. Barry, welcome. Thanks ever so much for coming along today. Now, you've been through a process of introducing machine learning into the software that you provide into the housing market. Let's take a little step back first and ask you, from a business perspective, what are the real business drivers that are making machine learning so important to organisations at the moment, and I guess particularly in your market of housing management?
Well, yes, there really is two main drivers, but the most important driver at the moment is moving over to universal credit. I find it interesting when I talk to my friends about the impact of universal credit, and they don't realise exactly why it has made such a big impact in the housing market. And it's because in the old days, when people used to receive housing benefit, it was paid directly to the landlord. That payment was just as good as a direct debit payment. It was going to arrive every 7 days. But with universal credit, it's paid to the tenant. And it's quite often takes a while for that to arrive, so there'll be 5 weeks in arrears before they even get to the first payments. And so that is driving a huge amount of arrears, and we haven't completely rolled out universal credit. There's only, let's say, in a typical London borough, there would only be about 3,000 accounts so far on universal credit, and already we're seeing in the data how that is increasing the arrears. But I think the second driver is just the last few years, the drive to try and do more with less as budgets have been reduced, and how that's affected IT departments, and also that there's been redundancies in those areas. So the expertise in those staff has changed, and they need to do more and more with less, but they need to be more targeted and help people more as well. So it's like a perfect storm in our market at the moment.
So there's some very real challenges there, both from a high-level business perspective in the housing market, but generally, as you talked about there, just within IT departments themselves. Given those sort of real business drivers, what are the real technology challenges that fall out of those then for organisations like yourselves or for IT departments that are having to implement some of these new ideas?
Yes, I think the way I see it is that there's this huge sweet shop of different things out there, and the IT ends up with this pick and mix approach. They end up with small little systems that solve a particular problem for local government. Those small systems have very high yearly license costs. They tend to be little silos of data, so that data isn't easily usable as a whole for the organisation. It's not an enterprise approach. These systems tend to have more interesting technology. All of a sudden, you need to have resources that work for you that know R or might know Python or Hadoop or all of these exotic names which are driving the market at the moment. But this pick and mix approach, you end up with lots of little different things, none of them linking up, none of them properly integrating into the centre, into your business, and that's very costly. And when you lose some of the consultants that know how to look after these systems, you're left with a black box that you can't really work with. So I see that as one of the real difficulties. It's the temptation to take an off-the-shelf solution to one of your problems, which in the long term is just increasing your problems. It may solve the problem in the short term, but it just increases your problems.
That's a lot to think about that you've outlined there in terms of some of the technology challenges. And you as an organisation have been through this process of looking at what machine learning and automation can do to help the software that you develop. So, in doing that, how did you go about tackling some of those challenges?
We start with a huge advantage by having an integrated housing management system, and a system where we can track the tenant from initial contact with us and ongoing contact. We can understand the condition of their property as it moves from being empty to being tenanted, and again through to being empty again. Our integrated system and integrated asset management. We have a huge mine of data, and so what we found is that when we bring that all together and then load it into the autonomous data warehouse, we can use it to answer these questions, and the answers that can be quite accurate. I'm later on going to show that how with very simple application you can predict if somebody's going to pay their rent, but with an 80% accuracy. But it's only because by having an integrated housing management system that's on common tools, we don't need to train staff in new languages. We have the data there in front of us. We can make these predictions. We can also make predictions as the data is entered, because it's all within the Oracle database. So we could actually predict if someone's going to pay their rent as they sign up for their tenancy in real time. So Oracle has given us a huge advantage there.
So you've been through this project. You're now have this machine learning functionality that's built into your software. What have you found have been the real benefits of that, both for you as an organisation, but also for your customers as well?
One of the main advantages is the ability to target down on the rent account. And one of the problems in housing management, where you've got a huge report and you don't know which ones to target first. Well, machine learning enables you to identify those people in the most need, but not only that, to identify them early, before it gets too much of a problem. Because I think we'd all know this. It's when you owe a little bit of money on something, it's a lot easier with a bit of help to get that paid than if you say owe 27 weeks of rent. It becomes impossible if you leave it too long. But it's not only that though. Using machine learning, we can identify some of the common clerical errors, human errors that they happen naturally. I'll give you an example. We've used an anomaly detection to look at the data, and we find things like someone who's in receipt of housing benefit and universal credit. Now the model knew nothing about that shouldn't be possible. Someone's either on one thing or the other. But it also found accounts, say where somebody worked for the local authority, but also had a rent account. Well, when they left, their rent account would no longer be subsidised. Well, anomaly detection can highlight things like that the subsidy is still being paid, and obviously that it's important. The sooner that's noticed, the easier it is for all parties. So as a holistic approach, and looking at how the things you learn in machine learning can also be brought back to help users do their job, it's a fantastic solution. It really is.
So the introduction of machine learning has obviously brought a lot of benefits to you and to your customers. But most of the people who are watching this video are just going to be setting out perhaps on looking at how these sort of tools can be introduced into their environment. Having been through it, if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's just starting out now, what would that be?
Oh, definitely to keep it simple. But also you need to define the question you're asking the data. You've got to be very, very clear. It's worth taking days and days. It's no good asking a very wide question. One of the first mistakes I made was I tried to predict what somebody's rent account would look like in 6 weeks. 6 months. And 6 months is just too far in the future. There simply isn't the signal in the data to be able to predict that far out. But also, quite often to start with yes and no answers. In machine learning, that's a classification a model. That was where we started from. But another really important thing is to share this work. So often these kind of exercises ends up being just one person's baby, and the rest of the company that don't really know what they're up to. It needs to be from the start, from the business, from the people that do this job and understand the business application, and then the technical people who make it happen. It's got to be throughout the business. It's got to be a collaborative effort, and it goes on. Once you have a model and a prediction, it doesn't stop there. That collaboration, that move, can we improve this? Can we bring in data from outside? Can that help make our models more accurate? And is our model still relevant today? Have people's payment methods changed over time? We need to keep a track of that. But I think one of the most important things is that you need to control the models. You need to know what parameters you use, what features you use, how did you generate that model. So tightly change control, so that when you come back to look at that model, you know exactly how it's created so that you can reproduce it. That's really important.
Okay, that's some really valuable learning, really important experience to share there. Barry Starkey from Northgate Public Services, thank you for coming along and sharing what you've done in terms of introducing machine learning. That's all we've got time for in this video. Hopefully what Barry's been talking about there will give you some useful tips and hints to consider as you come to look at how some of these new tools around machine learning and automation might be able to help you. Thanks for watching.